build a business model that you feel extremely passionate about, make it a 1 or 2 pager. Don't worry about the product for now. The product will evolve to fit the business model.
Welcome to Honest E-commerce, where we're dedicated to cutting through the BS and finding actionable advice for online store owners. I'm your host, Chase Clymer, and I believe running an online business does not have to be complicated or a guessing game. If you're struggling with scaling your sales, Electric Eye is here to help. To apply to work with us, visit electriceye.io/connect to learn more. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Honest E-commerce. I'm your host, Chase Clymer, and today we're welcoming to the show the CEO and founder of Sheets and Giggles, a sustainable but funny first bedding brand based in Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Chase.
Awesome. So we are going to start this in a very fun place. Let's talk about when you got fired and what led to the beginning of Sheets and Giggles.
Sure. The day I got fired. So that was September 25th, 2017. It was a Monday. It was warm outside. I remember it like it was yesterday. So basically, at 1:00 on a Monday, about just over 3 years ago, I actually got laid off from the longest job I had ever had, which was at a startup that I had helped co-found with a few friends of mine. And that was really painful because I actually had spent about 3 years in my mid to late 20s there. I had, given a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, had gone through Techstars with that company, raised millions of dollars from great venture capitalists. And we had hired a team of about 20 people working in downtown Denver. And unfortunately, it all came crashing down very suddenly when my friends and I all got laid off at 1 p.m. on a Monday afternoon. And it was, coincidentally right before holiday. So I was running all of our retail partnerships at the time, really great partnerships with folks like Target and Brookstone. And, we had on-air deals with HSN and QVC, and we were nationwide in stores. Those phone calls I had to make that day to those partners, letting them know that suddenly that was my last day. And, they had a lot of questions about what about the units we're expecting, the shelf space, holiday. Really brings back a lot of tough memories from that day. And so I did what, most people would do, getting laid off in the afternoon on a Monday. We went and got tanked at a local margarita place just down the street, my friends and I, after I made all those calls. And that night, with all my friends from the company, I started telling them about what I was going to do next. And the one thing I could not stop thinking about was Sheets and Giggles. And I got laughed at a lot that night by my friends. But 3 years later, it's, I think I incorporated the company 3 weeks after that day. And now 3 years later, it's a dream come true. No pun intended.
Well, so I guess this idea, you didn't have this idea in the 7 hours between getting fired and going and having a few drinks. So where did this idea come from? How long had you been stewing on it?
I think it was more than a few drinks actually that day. But so I had been stewing on that idea for probably about 3 or 4 months at that point. I remember I actually had bought the domain one night. This is a true story, and it's the most bizarre founder story. A lot of people are like, oh, I had this very personal problem, or, a lot of people in the bed sheet space are always like, oh, I stayed at a hotel and the sheets were so nice. And I thought there has to be a better way. But for me, it was actually kind of funny. I was watching a movie called War Dogs with Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. Have you ever seen it?
I have. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great one. And I give it like a 7 out of 10. But so Miles Teller's character is selling bed sheets out of the back of a pickup truck in the beginning of the movie, if you remember. And he gets turned down by all these retirement homes. They're saying, oh, I don't need great bed sheets. Like, my people at the homes can't feel their backs, yada, yada, very mean customers. And Miles Teller's character has like 10,000 units of inventory, right, that he has to sell, or he's going to go broke and go bankrupt. And I got so frustrated with this guy's character. I turned to my now ex-girlfriend, because this is the type of person that I am. And I was like, this is ridiculous. He bought all his inventory. He didn't do any market research. He didn't do any pricing research. And he doesn't understand his core customer, his demographics. You know what? Pause the movie. And I wrote a business plan for a bed sheets company that night. And whenever I write a business plan, I always think, what is a funny name for blank, for this company? And I thought, I just snapped my fingers and I was like, Sheets and Giggles. That's a funny name. and I bought sheetsgiggles.com. I bought, not bought, but I got all the social handles at sheetsgiggles everywhere. I loved that it matched up. So, no and in the URL or the social handles. And I just became enamored with this idea over time. It like worked its way into my brain of a funny first bedding company that was also like sustainable premium products. And when I got laid off, it was this opportunity to take what I had learned from my prior company, which was a consumer electronic that was heavily physical retail, and bring it online with a more direct consumer model with a very different product category, and basically do all the things that I wish we could have done differently at that company, differently for my own company.
That's awesome. So you just jumped in feet first after you kind of had this just in your back pocket. What do all e-commerce stores have in common? That's right, customers. And those customers are going to have questions. Gorgias is the leading e-commerce help desk with over 5,500 customers on Shopify, Magento, and BigCommerce. Their software is built with machine learning to optimize your support system and allow your team to save time and money on repetitive inquiries while still remaining personalized. What it does is take all of your customers' insights and information, brings it into their amazing dashboard so you can solve your customer's problem as quickly as possible. If you want to give Gorgias a try, visit gorgias.grsm.io/honest to get your second month free. That's gorgias.grsm.io/honest. You get laid off, you're diving in, and how did you start iterating on like what you were going to do for the product? How did you kind of get the first product to market? Where'd you go to kind of with your first initial marketing push? Because I guarantee there's people listening to the podcast right now that have a good idea for a product and they don't know what their next step is.
Yeah, and going from 0 to 1 is, I think, the hardest part of any company. It's also my favorite part of any company. And so for me, I'm like a very methodical person when it comes to business planning. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do it opposite of the way that I do it, which, it's a very typical founder story. Oh, I saw this problem and I built the solution and I invested tens of thousands of dollars in it and I got it patented and then I bought some inventory and now I get this question all the time in Denver, and it's a sad question because the question is, how do I sell it? And I can only think of how many pre-orders people. I know somebody who invented this box for on-the-go tissues, and it's actually quite brilliant. It's a really cool invention, and I hope that they're successful. But it was at Startup Week in Colorado last year, where I did a panel and they asked me, I said, hey, I've spent $50,000 on the patent for this, as well as the initial manufacturing run. I've got, 20,000 of these in my basement and I'm trying to get deals with retailers or funding from venture capitalists, but I'm all out of cash. What do I do? And the answer is you go back in time and you don't patent it and you don't create the inventory and you'd use that $50,000 to do a banger of a crowdfunding campaign. And so long story short, I would, as of right now, if you're, someone who has a product idea, my best advice is to build a business model that you feel extremely passionate about, make it a 1 or 2 pager. Don't worry about the product for now. The product will evolve to fit the business model. So create your business model, understand your go-to-market strategy, your channel strategy, distribution, points of differentiation, your brand voice, do a brand identity map, do a financial model, understand your COGS, your fulfillment, your return rates, what your bottom line looks like at the end of the day, what your fixed cost might be, therefore what your break even is going to be from a per unit perspective. And you'll hear me start to name things when it comes to business model, brand identity map, and financial model that are very concrete, tangible things that I did in October and November of 2017 that don't cost you a cent. And then once you're convinced that the financial viability is there of the business model and of the product that you want to build, then you can start backing your way into it from that perspective. So for me, my perfect business model was a massive commodities market with no brand differentiation or loyalty, that had no switching costs, so customers could adopt my product without any pain, that was largely traditionally physical retail, so I could help bring it online with a direct-to-consumer model, that also was something that didn't have any good sustainable options, so I could differentiate on the sustainability, and preferably something that was highly fragmented, so no market leader that I had to chip away at. And that was really the business model I built. And I was partial to Sheets and Giggles, and I already had the idea at that point, but I looked at sunglasses, I looked at tables, I looked at, other different verticals that in different commodity spaces that I thought might be interesting, apparel. And at the end of the day, I was just so in love with the brand of Sheets and Giggles that I went forward with the bed sheets. And plus, the bedding was a perfect fit. $12 billion U.S. commodities market, growing 10% year over year. The top 5 players only own like 27% of the space, so highly fragmented. And at that point, I didn't see any good sustainability options. There were only cotton and polyester as the main options on the market. And so from there, once I built the brand identity map, the financial model, the business model, I passed it around to people, mentors, people that I respected. I got advice on it. People said, why not this? Why this? Challenging me with some of my assumptions. And then from there, I began doing materials research and sourcing. I did some initial designs in terms of what I wanted my bed sheets to look like, feel like, extra deep pockets, corner tags that said different things, what the packaging should look like. And then from there, in the home textile space specifically, there's a manufacturing conference every year in March in New York City that I went to. I met with different manufacturers. I found someone from both an ethics perspective and a capabilities perspective with what I needed to produce the materials and the quantities that I needed and the colors that I wanted, my designs, and signed. I think our initial purchase order was like a $300,000 purchase order, which was terrifying, and went off from there. But there's also a couple of things I'm leaving out that I'm happy to dive into, like why I signed the purchase order, the confidence I was feeling with the pre-order that we were gearing up for, the crowdfunding campaign we ended up doing. And this is all kind of happening in tandem around Q1, Q2, 2018.
Yeah, let's just kind of dive into, outside of doing kind of this business feasibility exercise all over the place, a lot of great stuff you shared there. You were also launching an Indiegogo. So dive into that a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, so specifically, I chose Indiegogo over Kickstarter for a number of reasons. The main ones are that Indiegogo is more geared towards like sales and variants of items. So sizing, colors, whereas Kickstarter is more of like a project basis crowdfunding platform. Kickstarter does have, I think, 3x the daily visitors of Indiegogo. So you do lose some traffic, but you are more discoverable because there are fewer projects on Indiegogo.
Businesses are the most successful when they own their data, customer relationships, and their growth. That's why more than 50,000 e-commerce brands like Living Proof, Huckberry, and Solo Stove trust Klaviyo to deliver their ideal customer experience. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and all sizes. With email automation, SMS marketing, list growth tools, and more, you'll get everything you need to build strong relationships that keep your customers coming back. If you're tired of relying too heavily on paid advertising or third-party marketplaces for your sales success, you're not alone. It's time to take back control of the customer experience. More and more online businesses are moving to Klaviyo to grow higher value customer relationships through personalized email and SMS marketing. And the results are staggering. On what's typically the biggest weekend of the year for online retailers, last Cyber Weekend alone, brands made nearly $1 billion in sales through Klaviyo's platform. That's 3.1% of total online sales that were powered by Klaviyo. Ready to drive future sales and higher customer lifetime value with a marketing platform built for your long-term growth? Get a free trial at klaviyo.com/honest. That's KLAVIYO.com/HONEST.
So those are some of the reasons why I chose that over Kickstarter, in case anybody's wondering. We began gearing up for this crowdfunding campaign. We gave ourselves 12 weeks to prepare. Normally you want to do 8 to 12 weeks for preparation for a crowdfunding campaign. And the number one thing that people, I think, get wrong with that is they rely on their friends and family to finance their entire project, which is just not how it's going to work. People forget the day of, they, maybe don't love you as much as you thought they did. Or at the end of the day, even if you have, 100 people who really deeply love you and who are going to give you, $100 out of their pocket, that's still only $10,000. And for most companies, you're going to need far more than that in order to be successful. So generally speaking, for a crowdfunding campaign, it's all going to rely on your email list in terms of success or failure. And so for me, my goal internally was $100,000. Externally, we made it $50,000 because we wanted to anchor on something that was a little bit lower, so we could then do on goals to unlock and duvet covers and comforters. It was a strategic thing, and I can get into the goal setting if you want. But internally, we wanted to make $100,000 because we knew that with a $300,000 PO, we could break it up into 3 shipments, and the first shipment will be $100,000. And basically, I knew that 1, we could get to market and actually deliver a product with that, and then 2 was that that would be enough, in my opinion, to convince external investors that there was a market for this punny, ridiculous brand that I was building. And so from there, we just work backwards from the goal. So $100,000 goal. Average unit price is going to be $70. Average order is going to be 1.5 units. Therefore, average order value is $100. On day 1, you generally want 30% of your overall goal on a crowdfunding campaign. That's just how the math works. So if you have a $100,000 goal, 30% on day 1 is $30,000 on day 1 is what you need to make over a 30-day campaign. And at a $100 average order value, $30,000 on day 1, that's 300 distinct individual customers I needed to pull out their credit card and give me their money on day 1 of this Indiegogo. So therefore, if you need 300 customers and an email list reasonably converts at about 3%, then I needed 10,000 emails of interested, qualified people who had bought into the brand in order to guarantee without a doubt that we were going to be successful for this. And so for 10 weeks, that's all we did. We created content, landing pages, photography, videography, all low cost stuff. I had a photographer friend of mine for $500 come out and do our photo shoots for a couple of days. Really, really awesome work by Megan. And I got all my friends as models, very cheap, paid them in pizza and whiskey. And we got, bed sheets that I don't even think were our brand. They were just white bed sheets. And we had a blast. We drank whiskey, smoked cigars, played with dogs in bed all day. That was back in February of 2018. We put that content on landing pages that we created with Shopify and Kickoff Labs, which is a great landing page software. And then we went ahead, and when I say we, I mean me and my intern, Haley. And then also we hired a crowdfunding agency named Russell Marketing, who I trust with my life. And we set about gathering emails, and we ended up capturing 11,000 emails in 8 weeks of Facebook ads to early adopters and lookalike audiences of early adopters. And we did that at, I believe, an 89-cent cost per lead. So it was just under $10,000 spent in preparation for those 11,000 emails. And on day 1, we launched and we got 4.5% conversion from our list, just like clockwork. And we got $45,000 day 1. And that ended up snowballing into a $284,000 crowdfunding campaign.
Colin, I cannot thank you enough for literally walking people through the math behind doing a successful launch. Thank you so much.
No, yeah. For sure. It's just like, and I know I rambled there for a little while, but like, it's such a specific formula. And I feel like a lot of people they think like, oh yeah, like I have 1,000 emails plus like my LinkedIn contacts, plus like my Facebook friends. And it's like, no, like you got to think that your social followers are going to convert at less than 1%. They're not people that have bought into this. They're people bought into you, but onto this. And so it's really that email list and gathering that is so crucial. So I always tell people, make sure you have 30 times the emails that you want for day 1 sales. If you convert at 3%, and model it out. If you convert at 2% or 4%, what's it look like? And God forbid you convert at 1%. But I mean, what that look like too? So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's that's like why I like this industry, is because you can get kind of very nerdy with the math. And it also makes it's easy to pull your gut away and just look at the numbers and make a choice based upon data. But you could also argue that sometimes the best decisions are the ones that are you're ignoring the data and going with your gut.
Yeah, all the time.
Nobody likes insurance, but everybody should have it. Mistakes do happen. Our partner Rewind can protect your Shopify store with automated backups of your most important data. Rewind should be the first app you install to protect your store against human error, misbehaving apps, or collaborators gone bad. It's like having your very own magic undo button. Trusted by over 70,000 businesses, from side hustles to the biggest online retailers like Gymshark, Gatorade, and Movement Watches. Best of all, respond to any of their welcome emails and mention Honest E-commerce to get your first month absolutely free. So with launching this campaign, so it took you...
Oh, sorry. Can I tell you a quick funny story about the trusting of the gut versus the data?
Yeah, let's do it.
Although I think the data would probably support this too. So it literally happened today. And for those that are recording this the week before Black Friday, or the week of Black Friday. But we're going to do a discount plus donation deal, which is what we do every Black Friday. We do some percent discount, some percent donate. And that goes with our, sustainability, corporate social responsibility brand. Like, we're a very giving brand. We've donated like $40,000 to COVID relief this year. We've donated tens of thousands of dollars in bed sheets to homeless shelters to isolate symptomatic individuals from the general population. Like, we love doing stuff like this, but we were going to do 15% off and 15% donated. And in some meeting this morning, somebody said, yeah, like 2020 has been a hell of a year. Like, I wish our special was, 20% off and 20% donated so we could, have some fun with that. And I just like kind of paused and I was like, why didn't anybody bring this up before? It's genius. Of course, we're going to do 2020. So now, literally on a dime, we just changed all of our advertising, all of our emails, all of our website messaging, all of our discounts, our stuff that was queued up on Amazon to be 20% off plus 20% donated. So that way we can save things like, it's the most fun you'll have all year to see 2020, or like it's the happiest you'll be all year to see 2020. And it makes so much more sense, even though it's another 10% off the bottom line. I think that content and that messaging and that discount level will convert at a much higher level and probably offset that. And you'll see greater revenues at about the same bottom line. So that was just like one of those intuitive decisions that I just kind of immediately made that seems obvious in retrospect. And we'll just have to see how the data shakes out.
Yeah, and it's just so on brand for you guys.
Yeah, it's a bit. So I think if any additional bits we can add to the roster, I'm always for it.
Awesome. So I just want to just dive right back into the Kickstarter Indiegogo. I'm sorry. I don't really want to beat this to death, but I just want to ask us a more specific question. So would you have kind of rough numbers of the overall cash investment for that initial launch? That's honestly like the 0 to 1, like that's giving it your all. And then also the time commitment that you were putting into this.
Oh, well, so that's the thing about the time commitment is that, I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week for probably 18 months. There was a point where I was, and this is after launch, right? There was a point where I was in the warehouse 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, packing boxes, lifting hundreds of pounds here and there with my team, trying to get orders out for holiday, while on the phone with investors raising a seed round, while, then during lunch and at night doing all of the holiday marketing, because it was November of 2018, December of 2018, all the holiday content and emails and website updates and CEO stuff on top of it. So the time commitment just can't be understated. And, no one should start a business if they're not looking to work 100-hour weeks for at least for some period of time. But, I also hate that like hustle porn. So like, I'm not glorifying it. It's terrible. But then, in terms of the financial investment specifically, I made a budget and I basically budgeted and I said, look, I think that I can get to market and ship product with, I think it was something like $150,000. And that's what I need. And I was like, I think I can make $100,000 from this crowdfunding campaign. And that means I need another $50,000 from somewhere else. And so, that was everything from photography to testing samples to shipping estimates for our first 1,000 units, to all the 5% that we were going to give to Indiegogo, to what I needed to pay my crowdfunding agency, to the hourly wage that I was paying my intern. So it was just a number of different things on top of each other that made up the initial budget. And then from there, I took that budget and I went to, and this is, a very privileged thing to say, but I went to different people, not investors necessarily, different people that knew me and trust me and who were my mentors in my prior company. And I said, hey, I'm starting this company. Here's the business plan. Here's the business model. Here's the financial model. Here's a 3-year look ahead. Would you be interested in giving me an angel round of financing? And from 6 different people, I collected checks ranging from $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 and pooled together $60,000 from 6 people that trusted me very implicitly. And there were people that said no. I probably talked to 10 people, 6 said yes, and 4 said no, I don't want to do this. And that $60,000 was then on top of a $15,000 initial investment that I made into the company from my own savings. So I had $75,000 of pooled cash, and I knew that before the crowdfunding campaign, I had to spend $5,000 upfront on my Indiegogo agency. I had to spend another $10,000 at least in marketing. another probably 5,000 for photography and videography, all in together to get everything that we needed from a content perspective. And then miscellaneous, probably another 5,000 here and there.
Since 2004, Avalara's vision has been to harness the power of cloud technology to help simplify sales tax for businesses of all sizes. Avalara solutions are designed to affordably scale with businesses as they grow over time. Tax compliance is not a revenue-generating activity. So, Avalara's technology is designed to help you manage compliance as efficiently and accurately as possible so you can reclaim your valuable time and reduce risk in your business. With more than 1,000 signed partner integrations, Avalara likely integrates with the ERP, e-commerce, mobile payment, and point-of-sale systems you use today. Find out how your business can be sales tax ready at avalara.com/honest. That's avalara.com/HONEST. Avalara, tax compliance done right.
So I knew that before Indiegogo launch, I was going to spend $25,000 of that $75K. And then in order to get started on the production, I had to wire another $25,000 for our initial production run to our manufacturing partners in India. So that was another $25,000 out of the $75,000 down. So I was left with $25,000 in cash ahead of the Indiegogo launch. And that, I believe we used 15,000 to 20,000 of that. I can't remember the exact amount on Facebook ads throughout the course of the campaign. And we turned that into, 10x on that for the campaign itself. So basically we went in with 75 all in, and we came out with about $250,000 out. And that was the initial kind of jumpstart for the company. And it was $250,000 after Indiegogo fees, taxes, credit card fees, payments to our Indiegogo agency. And that was the cash that we were left with coming out of that. You just want to be conservative, subtract 20% from your Indiegogo take to just be conservative on how much cash you're actually going to have when it's all said and done. And that's the breakdown of our initial numbers to get the market.
Awesome. And I just want to kind of point something out here that you skirted over, but I know it's kind of how it works with these Kickstarter Indiegogo agencies. They take kind of a percentage of the win, right?
Yeah. And it depends on the agency that you use. I won't name anybody aside from the folks that I work with. Again, they're called Russell Marketing. I do not get a kickback from them or any type of fee. I just love Will Russell and his team. He's my spiritual co-founder. We don't work with them anymore. We kind of outgrew them from an agency perspective because they're more of a crowdfunding expertise, but they're stellar. Anybody else, and I don't mean this. Actually, I do mean this pejoratively. Most other agencies in this crowdfunding space are just sharks. They're just terrible people. They're predators. They will, say, oh yeah, we need a $5,000 setup fee or $2,000 setup fee. And then, we'll spend our own money on our advertisements and you get 80% of the sales and we get 20%. And how awesome is that? That way you're guaranteeing yourself a 5x return on ad spend, and it's our spend. You don't even need the budget. Oh my gosh, you're an early entrepreneur. You're full of hopes and dreams. You're optimistic. Give us your money and we will make this happen for you. You give them your money. They spend that. You give them $5,000, $2,000, whatever the setup fee is. They end up spending $500 of it on their initial test ads. They get back to you. They say, hey, sorry, the test ads didn't perform at the level that we need. And you can't expect us to allocate our capital to underperforming clients, do you? And they go allocate it somewhere else. They tell you to F off. And you're out $4,000 or $5,000, 3 weeks worth of time. And now you've been taken advantage of as an early entrepreneur. And that is what every agency in this space does, except for, in my experience, Will Russell and Russell Marketing. And I get so frustrated when I think about those crowdfunding agencies preying on the hopes of early entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And just for everyone listening, is he should have that guy on the podcast. I absolutely am getting that email after this, so don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. I'll hook you up with Will. He's a great guy, British guy. I don't know why I specified British, but that's one of the things I think about him because he's got an accent. But so he actually, and I'll just segue for a second. Every other crowdfunding agency that I talk to, and I talk to all the ones. If you Google Kickstarter agency, I'm not going to name names, but there's 3 or 4 that come up, right? And I talked to all of them. And I think 2 of them, one of them outright rejected me. They were like, it's not interesting. You're not going to make enough money. We only work with people that make over $100,000. And then a week after we launched, they were emailing me, we'd love to work with you. Work with us. They don't, they have no idea what's going to hit and what's not. The second one, I think, said, yeah, we'll work with you, give us a big setup fee. And like, they just didn't get a good feeling from them. And then the other couple I just got this really sharky feeling. And I even paid one of them $2,000. And then they did exactly what I said. And they effed off after they spent the initial $800 out of it. And they took the other $1,200 and put it in their pocket. And Will, by contrast, actually got on the phone with me as a human being, talked me through what I was thinking, helped me understand why I would pursue one goal versus the other, perk strategy. He then did research into the betting space on Kickstarter and Indiegogo in the past. He saw that Brooklinen had done like a $236,000 Kickstarter in 2014. He saw other betting brands had done six-figure Kickstarters. And he said, I think we can make this work. I only work with campaigns I think can do $100,000. And I think that you can. And, he told me his fee, exactly what you're talking about, a small upfront fee plus, percentage take on the back end. And I'll let people negotiate with him themselves on what that looks like. And then he flew out to Boulder to whiteboard it with me before any money ever changed hands. And that was the moment that I realized I really wanted to work with this guy, because he was investing a few $100 into a round trip ticket. And, he went skiing for the weekend, so he got a ski trip out of it too. But I don't know, people you trust are worth their weight in gold, and there's too few of them out there.
Again, you're just dropping awesome knowledge bombs here and walking people through that. And I have said it before on the podcast, and I think it is rare that anyone other than a founder is going to help you find product market fit. And I think you might have just given me a glimpse into rethinking that.
Yeah, I mean, and Will, I think that the trick is that he's seen, and now it's just a podcast about Will. I'm going to send him this and tell him he owes me some type of champagne bottle. But, he taught me a lot of what I know about crowdfunding, and because he's seen so many founders come through and come to life. And he is a CEO himself of his own agency. So he's also a founder and CEO. So I think he just has a different perspective on it. And it holds true that like working with other people on his team was good, but never as good as working with a founder. Like it's a completely different feel.
Absolutely. Let's fast forward a bit now.
Sure.
You guys are you've grown a ton. Now we're into 2020, pandemic, Black Friday's right around the corner. This won't come out until probably February though, if I'm being honest. What does things look like now? You know what I mean? What's the landscape these days? You guys are kind of out of that startup phase. Now you're into what people would necessarily consider scaling. Is kind of what is the terms that are being thrown around kind of in the space. So what's different? What's different between now and then?
It's just a different skill set. It's a totally different skill set. I'm really good at doing 80% of everything with 20% of the time. Like I'm just a big 80-20 dude, and I will crush customer service for a few hours. Then I'll go to, this is back in the day, right? In 2018, when it was just me in my bathrobe in bed with my dog, Harvey. Shout out to Harvey. He's got his own webpage, sheetschedules.com/Harvey. He's the best boy and our VP of marketing. But so basically that was like, do the manufacturing, do the supply chain management, create the product designs, negotiate with the manufacturers, do the customer service, create the content for the ads, do the photo shoots, build the shot list, write the scripting for the videos you're doing, monitor the Facebook ad performance. It was just everything. And if you're, a high functioning lunatic like me, you can do it and scale to, I think before I ever hired a single employee, we had already made our first over $500,000 in revenue. And that was in our first 6 months. And then we had close to our first six-figure month, but we had reached $90,000 one month. And I was literally in the warehouse shipping boxes. And I know it's still a baby because I say that was 25 months ago. October 1st, 2018 was 25 months ago. And we just hit 2 years in sales and shipping. And, we went from our, close to $100,000 a month 2 years ago in November of 2018. I think we did $90,000 that month, to November 2020 will be our first $1 million plus month in 2 years. And so that can give people maybe the idea that the scale that we're at, I don't think that it's to some people, they'll hear $1 million a month, and in my mind, and I have to take time to smell the roses and be like, this is really awesome. If you told me this 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely. But to some people, you say $1 million a month and they kind of brush it off and say, oh, like Allbirds did that in month 6 or like whatever, and I think it's just all relative. Like you'll never, like, comparison is the theft of joy. And I think that, like, I get very happy when I think about this weird little company I built scaling to an 8-figure run rate in less than 2 years. But, the challenges are completely different. Like now I move from a founder who's doing everything to a CEO who facilitates and finance everything. And it's a less fun job. I don't enjoy it as much. I deal with a lot more problems, a lot more emotional problems, a lot more people problems. I am constantly, trying to figure out how to put more money into the business without necessarily diluting us or taking on bad debt terms. I'm always pushing the team to hit more aggressive goals, which, can be a stressful thing, especially during a really challenging year that 2020 has been. I don't get to do much of the content that used to be my lifeblood. But it's about finding joy in the work product of your team, because my team does some good shit. They do some good stuff, man. And this year has been an exercise in the last 6 months of telling myself that more people than you are capable of really great content and capable of building a really good brand. And I'm just really, really pleased with how I think I personally have grown into the role, even though it is less fun than it used to be.
I can relate so hard. We've grown a lot this year. Our team has doubled, and I do absolutely nothing that I used to do. And it's it's crazy to kind of, I wouldn't thought this is what I'd be doing now.
Right. Exactly. You get really good at, a bunch of different things. And yeah, I'll put it this way, a founder skill set is fundamentally different than a CEO skill set. And that's why a lot of founders really actually fail or struggle in the transition. And I'm saying that as someone who is at full blown risk of failing in the transition. We'll see how it goes. And that's why people hire seasoned CEOs take over from them as the founder. It happens all the time. And it's not a bad thing. Like that, I actually used to look at it as a bad thing when I was in my 20s and I would hear about a founder at a company hiring a CEO to take over their business for them. I used to say, how could somebody run somebody's business for them better than they could themselves? And now I realize, it's just a completely different skill set from going from 0 to 1 versus 1 to 2 versus 2 to 10. And I think right now we're probably at we're probably past 2, I guess. I don't know what revenue level you'd consider different stages of a business, but we're 2 years into this thing and I'm trying to figure out how to forecast inventory for 200 SKUs and bring in enough inventory financing to have working capital for 90-day turns, and figuring out hiring and scaling the team and doing this all forcibly remote in a pandemic riddled year. It's been wild, man.
I can only imagine how it is on your side of it. The one thing I do want to point out with, oftentimes people blur the lines between founder and CEO. And I want to kind of say there's nothing you're giving up as a founder if you hire a CEO except a little bit of money compared to what you own of the company.
Right. You might bring in somebody and pay them a salary and give them some of your founder's equity, but hiring a seasoned CEO can be a great call. And I think that I've hired a CEO coach. I've gotten mentorship. I've really worked hard on this skill set, but something as trivial as, and I say trivial, it's actually crucial. The packaging, we had a meeting on that this morning where the team had redesigned and revamped the packaging, and I was aware they were doing it. And I saw the initial drafts and I provided feedback into the process. But that packaging is my baby. That unboxing experience is Colin McIntosh, start to finish. And everything from the notes to the bits to the copy to the designs to the doodles to the experience, zero plastic, really great unboxing. That was something so crucial to me and so important to me. And then my team's telling me today, we've already submitted the designs, and if you need to change anything super big last minute, let us know. But we don't want you to make any major changes because it'd be a pain in the ass. That's something that really made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I'll double check everything, but like I have to remind myself, like you hired these people, you pay them good money, like you trust them, like you handpick them, like they can do a good job. Like don't reprimand them for doing their jobs like without you. And it's a challenge, like I'm a bit of a control freak. I think all founders are.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest learning curves that you have when you start to grow your team is you got to delegate, obviously, but you're not delegating a to-do list. That is a recipe for disaster. You're delegating outcomes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's so funny that you say that, because when I hired my initial team members, I was straight up delegating a to-do list. I was like, great, you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this. And like, here's the things that you're going to take off my plate. And it's okay with like customer service, and it's okay to some extent with production and supply chain management, but it's not okay with marketing, and it doesn't scale with any department. And that's one of my biggest lessons. Like, and frankly, I took the company from $0 and an idea that I wrote on a piece of paper to, over $2 million of venture capital investment and our first several $1,000,000 in sales, pretty much from myself, crosschannel.com and Amazon. Like, I think we had over 75 SKUs before I hired anybody else. Like, so I took it pretty far, but the last 18 months since we hired our first employees in February 2019, so it's been about 20 months since our initial hires. And then we've only had, for the majority of the company, only 3 or 4 people. And now we have 8, still very small. The amount of work that 8 people are able to do versus 1 is astronomical, as long as you give them the ability, the autonomy, and the tools to unlock that work. And like, that actually has been really interesting for me, is to the realization. I used to be a recruiter. And so one of the lessons I used to have as a recruiter is people hire people like themselves. And that's true for both negative things, like hiring the same gender, hiring the same race, as it is for positive things, like hiring for the same personality and skill set traits that you're looking for in the role. That's why you always want the interviewer to be like the perfect person that you could hire again for the role. And I just have to tell myself, like, look, you hired 7 little mini Collins that like are super hostile to micromanaging, that hate 9 a.m. meetings, that don't like being overloaded, that don't like, like all the things that I hated about my past jobs. So like, don't micromanage them. Otherwise you will like lose people. And that's what I have to remind myself of pretty much every day.
This has been one of my favorite interviews I've done this year, Colin. I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. Obviously, everyone go check out his amazing brand, Sheets and Giggles, sheetsgiggles.com. Is there anything I forgot to ask you, though, that you want to share with the listeners before we go?
I hope I didn't take too much time away from the questions. If there's anything else that your listeners like to hear, any specific questions, or like one thing that's like helpful for everybody out there, I'm happy to answer it before I go. The main thing I would say is that like, and hopefully it's inspirational, is like I don't know how you feel about this, Chase. I hope you feel the same way, but like, for people that are in a good spot already, where it's like, you have a good job, or you graduated from a good school, you have good prospects, maybe you have a little bit of savings in the bank, and it's a very privileged position to be in. So I don't take it for granted. And I wish everybody had the same starting position that I had from, where I came from and my backup plan. But if you have a good backup, if your backup is go work at Amazon, go work at Microsoft, like your backup is, go have a stable 9 to 5, then I would hope everybody out there would take the time to start their own company and give it a shot and spend 6 months trying to build something of their own. Because if your alternative is to just continue on the same path that you're already on for the next 40 years, like 6 months isn't going to change that. But it might change. It won't change it in a negative direction. It might change it in a positive direction. So I hope I really like to inspire people to like give it a shot, try to start their own thing, and it might be the best decision you ever made. It was for me, for sure.
Awesome. I love that. And I'm right there with you. I mean, it's investing in yourself is always going to be a positive thing in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, like I made sure I did it in my late 20s when I had no kids, no mortgage, no roots, no wife. Like, man, I see entrepreneurs with families, and I am so impressed and blown away and don't know how they do it. I just, can't imagine, not being able to just do this when I was a single young guy. But like, I hope that people out there take the chance and take the plunge. And, I hope this is helpful for some people that are at that 0 to 1 stage.
Absolutely. I'm sure it will be. And I know we'll kind of circle back next year and have you back on and talk about what's changed.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love doing that. And we can see if hopefully it's all been good.
I hope so as well. You take care.
All right. Thanks, Chase.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show and sharing their journey and knowledge with us today. We've got a lot to think about and potentially add into our businesses. Links and more information will be available in the show notes as well. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, feel free to reach out and learn more at electriceye.io/connect. Also, make sure you subscribe and leave an amazing review. Thank you.